Hello everyone, and welcome to Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host. I'm a journalist based out in Reykjavik, Iceland, where in the last week we had a blazing show of beautiful aurora. The Northern Lights are common here in the winter, but we don't always get clear skies, so often they're hidden behind the clouds. But we had a winter's night that was cold and fresh, and the whole sky was just dancing with green. Sometimes you can't see them in Reykjavik because of the city lights, but this time you really could. It was really spectacular. I try and keep my gaming Twitter just about games, but I got a phone photo that was quite nice, so I threw it up there. And people like to see the Northern Lights. I sometimes forget how lucky I am to live in a place where they are there from day to day and week to week. So that was quite special. What else has been going on? I've also had some really good mail today. My friend Maya Yantar is a ceramicist and an artist who lives in Belgium, and she sent me a couple of beautiful little handmade teacups with this amazing swirly blue pattern on them. They're really small Japanese-style teacups, and it's really nice to get late Christmas parcels in the mail. It really cheers me up to get mail. I should probably just order loads of stuff so I'm always getting parcels, because it gives me such a mood boost to get beautiful things. So it's been a nice quiet week, nice quiet start to the new year. I also started the One Finish a Week challenge again. It went nicely last year. I felt like having that added impetus to finish games rather than just starting them and then tailing off. The satisfaction of adding them to the One Finish a Week spreadsheet that Jero, who leads the group, runs, it really does add some motivation to get through the games and to see the credits. I think I finished more games last year because of that challenge than I probably have in the rest of my life combined. I've been a chronic bailer when things get a little too tough towards the end of the game. Some of them actually haunt me a little bit, like Metroid Prime on the GameCube. I loved that game, and I got to the final boss, and you have to kind of switch between fire and ice weapons, and you have to dodge and strafe and hide, and it was so hard that I tried forever and just failed. So it's actually been on my mind that if Metroid Prime does come to the Switch in a rebooted form in 2021, then finishing that game would be really high on my list, because it does haunt me a little that I didn't get there. I'd love to see the ending. Finishing Super Metroid was one of the good gaming memories of my young gaming life, basically. That final sequence, if you've played it, you'll know it's just fantastic. So, but I think that if I'd been in the One Finish a Week group, I might well have pushed that one over the line and just come back with a fresh pair of eyes and tried again. And if you've played some hard games, you'll know that often you can bang your head against a boss for half an hour or an hour, really frustrated and have your hands shaking and be so emotional about it. But if you take a sleep, come back in the morning, sometimes you'll just do it first time. It's like your brain learned the pattern and you just needed to drain out the tension and the emotion, and then you can just execute it. And I did play a game a little bit like that this week. One of the first games that I've completed this year is Nex Machina, made by Housemarque, the Finnish shoot-'em-up specialists. I also played Year Walk, a really enjoyable iOS game that's been on my mind for quite a while, about Nordic fairy tales. That was really cool. Or Nordic, I'm not sure if it's fairy tales or if it's some kind of like pagan spirituality. But that's a game about taking a walk at the turn of the new year and communing with spirits to get visions of the future. It was really spooky, a little disturbing, not quite what I was expecting, but a really fun play if you have an iPad or an iPhone. I don't think I'll do a full episode on that one, but I will give it a light recommendation here if that sounds like something for you. I also played If Found, a really wonderful Switch game, which I might do an episode on later. I'm still thinking about that game. It was really enjoyable. It's a visual novel with a mechanic where you scrub the screen with your finger, the touch screen, to remove like layers of paper so that you can read what's beneath, and a really beautiful story comes out as you play the game. It's a very creative way to make a visual novel feel involved because you're constantly physically affecting what's going on. Those games can become a little bit clicky, just clicking through text, and this one sidestepped that really well. I'm also playing A Plague Tale. I'm almost at the end of that one, so I imagine I'll be doing a future episode on it. But the main games that I'm going to talk about today will be Spiritfarer, which I played over the Christmas holidays and had a great time with, and WATTAM, a game that I've been planning to play for quite a while, since I enjoyed the Katamari Damacy game on Switch, made by the same maker. It's like his follow-up to the Katamari series. So I'm looking forward to talking about some of those games today. But before I do that, I would like to mention a few things, a little bit of housekeeping. So my friend Kieran, who you might have heard as a guest on one of the recent Game of the Year episodes, he runs a magazine called the Radical Art Review. It's a new magazine about art and activism and culture. Really interesting, really free-thinking magazine. And I'm going to get involved as the games editor. So they've been reposting my podcasts and thinking about what more we could do about games. I'm going to start a small gaming section for them, and I have lots of really interesting, thrilling content planned for them. We're going to start off with a big Game of the Year feature on Monday, just to get things rolling. But if you're interested in following how that goes, you can follow the Radical Art Review on Twitter and on social media at Rad Art Review, or Radical Art Review on some platforms, Rad Art Review on Twitter. And you can check out their website at radicalartreview.org and see if you're interested. I really enjoy what they do. It's unusual for a magazine to come out because there are so many publications and websites out there. It's unusual to get one that feels like it's filled a space that wasn't filled already. But the Radical Art Review is a really nice coming together of kind of philosophical takes, thoughtful takes on the news, and kind of left-wing thinking with a focus on activism, not afraid to grapple with some thorny topics. Everything's very thoughtful, everything's very interesting. So I'm really happy to be coming on board with them to do some games coverage. And there's a lot of good things planned. I would also like to give a quick mention to the show's Patreon page. Gaming in the Wild is listener supported. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/gaminginthewild. I have a few followers there. I think 9 people have signed up so far, from $1 up to $5 a month. I really appreciate everyone who signs up for that. I had a new patron who came in at the $5 maxi patron level. That was Jason Emery. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Jason. It means a lot to me. It gives me extra motivation to keep on with the podcasts. And that money will slowly mount up. At the minute, it's like $20 a month or something. So every few months, it will afford me like a new expensive game or perhaps like a new piece of recording equipment to make the show sound better. So thanks to Jason Emery. If you are interested in being a Patreon, there are various benefits. I did a big rundown of all of the New Year's sales. So there are 10 indie games available for under $10, some of them from as little as $2. And that's on the Patreon right now. So it's a good time to join up if you've been thinking about it, if you're a regular listener, or if you like what you hear today and you're a first timer. It's patreon.com/gaminginthewild, and you'll straight away see my breakdown of 10 phenomenally good indie games that you can get until I think the 21st of January when the sale ends on the Switch. So thank you to Jason. Thanks for everyone that's interested in that. I'll put a link in the show notes if you're interested. And with all of that good news and housekeeping out of the way, let's move on and begin the show by talking about the amazing indie game Spiritfarer. So I think I became aware of Spiritfarer on a Nintendo Indie World Direct. I did notice it. I noticed the graphics. They're all hand-drawn. and quite beautifully coloured and quite well animated. They're very slick and lovely to look at. But something about the game didn't quite grab me. I think it was in a direct with a bunch of other games that I was looking forward to more, and so it kind of slipped under my radar. But it's been on my mind. Something about it just kept it bubbling away at the back of my mind, and I picked it up in December. I was kind of thinking I want a Christmas game to play across the holiday period, something gentle, something beautiful, something that I can just have a good time with. And I was a little bit aware of the gameplay of Spiritfarer from the commercial, this kind of shipbuilding, spiritual journey hinged on Charon, the river boatman who takes people to the Styx in classical Greek literature. And I don't know, something about it all just came together, and I thought, I'm going to do it, now's the time. So I picked it up just before Christmas, and I played it every day across the Christmas holidays. I have quite a few hours racked up in that game now. I think I'm above the 30-hour mark, and a lot of those were 2 or 3 hour sessions on quiet Christmas holiday afternoons. But this game came out in 2019. It came out on almost everything. It's on the Switch, Xbox, PS4, Mac, Windows, Linux, and finally everyone's favourite, Google Stadia. It's made by Thunder Lotus, a Canadian studio. And I was quite surprised when Nintendo posted their most bought games, their greatest hits of 2020, the indie game list. I think there were 13 games on there or something, some really big ones. Some that are barely indies, like Ori and the Will of the Wisps and stuff like that. But Spiritfarer was there, and I was like, oh wow, this game really did hit the spot for a lot of people. So it's nice to see that it found its audience on the Switch, as many games do, especially indie games. And the music is by Maxime Lacoste Debut. I think I'm pronouncing that probably terribly. But I think the music is worth a mention. It's this beautiful orchestral score that carries on throughout the game. When you're sailing the sea, and every time you land on a new island, there is a piece of custom music. And the music changes based on what time of the day it is. There's like a soothing lullaby at night, and some nice bright music in the morning, and different music for different areas of the ocean. But this game is a combination of different gameplay styles. It has a lot of dialogue in it, so it has this kind of conversational, almost visual novel-y aspect to it, but that is offset by various other things. For example, the boat that you get as Stella at the start of the game is a boat that will carry spirits to their final end, which is the Evador. Charon, the boatman, is retiring, and for some reason he has anointed Stella to be his successor. So the first thing that you do is you buy a ship, a small ship, and you can build little structures on it. It's like a flatbed ship viewed from the side, like a horizontal cutaway. And then you have to sail around the oceans by looking at a map and clicking on a point of interest. And then you exit the map, and as you're sailing, you get to run around your ship, you get to do all of the chores. There's a lot of chores in this game. For example, you'll pretty soon realize that you need to feed your passengers, so you have to plant seeds, water plants, and then harvest the vegetables and plant more seeds in a kind of an ongoing way. You will also have to get fiber to knit together material, so you have to get like sheep's wool, you have to grow linen fiber, and then weave that. So there's lots of little mini games, like when you're weaving, you have to hold down the button until the loom gets to a golden spot, then let it go. If you hit it right on the bullseye, you'll get more material. So there's mini games in all of your different rooms of your ship. These are quite fun. It's a game of spinning plates in that kind of resource management way that you might be familiar with from other games. Like you'll be sawing planks, you'll be picking fruit from orchards, you'll be running down to check on the vegetables, you'll get a ding so you know that some food is ready in the kitchen. There's lots and lots of running around. And you can play it in a kind of fairly mindlessly, in a good way, in that you can just pick this game up, do a bit of Spiritfarer, and feel like you got a lot done. You'll have livestock and build houses for your guests. As you travel between the different islands, you meet a variety of spirits, some of which are just funny. There are many, many funny comedic characters that you'll come across on your travels, but occasionally you'll meet someone that has a kind of a silhouette behind them of an animal. You'll know that that is a spirit that is supposed to come to your boat. And they will come with you, they'll live on the ship, And as you sail around the sea with your passengers, you explore, you uncover quite a big map that's all shaded at the start. But as you go to new places, it slowly opens up and you can get a feel for the ocean that you're traveling. And the spirits that come onto your boat all have their own stories. When they first arrive, there is a small ceremony at the prow of the boat where you talk to them and they kind of change from being this little hooded spirit character into their kind of animal self. So they'll kind of transmogrify into, for example, a lynx or a big bull or a little pig. And they're kind of these little sort of human-style animals with different outfits on and stuff. And they become the animal that represents who they were in their life, I guess. And they'll then just like hang around the ship, basically. Occasionally they'll ask you for food, or you can try and remember to feed them all and just run around the ship feeding people in the morning. They'll also tell you bits of their life story, like their regrets or some of the main events of their life. And so you get these quite nice, delicate, personal feeling relationships with your passengers quite quickly. As you're clicking on different map areas, you have a lot of time between destinations, and so you have time to really get to know your characters. And the game also has a really adorable hug mechanic. So one of the things that you can do with your characters, you have 5 verbs with them. You can give, you can feed, you can talk, you can hug, or you can check on their status, which kind of tells you how well you're doing, whether you've discovered their favourite food yet, what their general mood is, what's annoying them and what isn't. But the hug mechanic is just beautiful. If you feed a character, like every now and then, you can just elect to hug them. There's a really beautiful little hug animation, and you get these little tender moments with your characters as the rest of the game unfolds. Really, really adorable, just adorable. And then after you've kind of carried out a series of tasks for them, sometimes they have forgotten a possession, or they'd like to visit an old house, or find someone that they'd like to see, or perhaps they just want like a really tasty last meal that you have to then find the ingredients for. So you have to carry out a range of tasks for your different guests, all of whom have really strong personalities. They're really well written. And then at the end of that sequence of events, as you're sailing around, improving your ship, getting more passengers, one of your passengers will say, "I'm tired, it's time to go to the Everdor." You'll take them to the Everdor and they'll leave the ship. And it can be quite an emotional ending sometimes. The first couple of passengers that I said goodbye to, I was kind of, I was just playing the game. It didn't really get to me. I didn't really think about it. But then there was one particular character who's like a kind of an old grandma style character. And her storyline just kind of resonated with me a little. And I got a little teary at the end there when I had to take her to the Everdor. It's just a really touching moment. And so I will say that if you are someone that has difficulty dealing with those issues of end-of-life care and those kind of things, then Spiritfarer might touch on that stuff for you. So that's just a little content warning that Spiritfarer, despite the fact that it's very soft, very sensitive most of the time, it does deal with end-of-life care as a topic. But it's all done very gently, and I actually found it very affecting. And the way that you have to talk to the different characters about their kind of their personal philosophies about death, a couple of them, someone might be scared about it, someone might be curious, someone might be quite philosophical. You have one character who turns out to be a lizard, who's very into meditation and very into spirituality and seems very connected to the event of their death in a kind of an almost Buddhist way. And then you'll have other characters that really just play it down. And so it kind of maps out the range of philosophies that people carry, from the kind of the quite basic to the highly developed about their relationship to mortality. So it does go to some really interesting places, especially for a game that looks and sounds the way it does. It looks colourful and almost cartoony or illustrative. It sounds very soft and orchestral and beautiful, and it's quite cute. You'll spend a lot of time plucking lettuces and looking after your sheep, trying to make sure they don't eat your crops, and carrying out some quite silly tasks that are really enjoyable. I smiled a lot in this game. A lot of the dialogue is laugh out loud funny, especially when you encounter spirits on the islands, the various islands of this world. You just have the most silly stories going on in their life, like someone who's waiting in a park and they're waiting for a blind date. And every time you talk to them, they're just having the most kind of paranoid, self-conscious thoughts. And they're like, what shall I talk about? What shall I talk about? Shall I ask him if he has any family? But no, what if his family has all died? Should I ask him what his favourite food is? Oh no, that's such a boring question. And you get these really funny little interactions with people all around this world. It really is a pleasure to traverse this world and to speak to all of the people who live there. There is also quite a strong Metroidvania aspect to this gameplay. That means that you'll sometimes reach dead ends, either in your ship or on land. If you're in your ship, perhaps you'll reach like an icy area and your ship can go no further until you've upgraded it to break through ice. Or perhaps as Stella on the islands, maybe you'll come to an area where you need to, for example, bounce on the top of a tent to reach a high cliff, or you need to use a zip line, or you need to do a double jump. And for every new passenger that joins your ship, you'll receive an obol, Charon's obols, the tokens that the passengers have to give you to receive your services and to travel to the Everdor. And your obols can be exchanged for these abilities, and you'll find shrines on different islands as you traverse the world. So you upgrade your ship, you upgrade Stella's abilities, and by the end Stella is very, very mobile. She can double jump and dash, and she's very dexterous, and the ship is quite big by the end. It's almost like you've built a town on this flatbed ship, capable of supporting itself by the end of the game. It's a really wonderful play. I spent 30 hours going through it. I played it. It was my before bed game, if you know what I mean. Like, rather than reading books these days, I'll turn down the brightness on my Switch screen, play half an hour of something, just winding down, something relaxing. And so Spiritfarer is, I think, a very subtle game. It's a sleeper hit. It doesn't shout loudly about its own quality. It doesn't shout loudly about anything. It's very mild. It's mild in tone. It's mild. It's a mild play, but it does touch on some difficult subject matter in a way that I found to be very sensitive and surprisingly evocative, surprisingly emotional. It's hard to make games about that particular subject matter, but they did a really great job. I think that Thunder Lotus clearly are a really talented studio, not only in the audio-visual department and the gameplay design department, but the writing. The writing is unusually strong in this game, very, very good. So I would give Spiritfarer a really heavy recommendation. I did pick it out as one of my 5 Switch games of the year for Switch Indie Fix, and that was right at the start of the game, really. I just knew that I was going to love this one. I stand by that now. It would maybe have scraped into my top games of the year if I had finished it before we did those episodes. As it stands, it's just a really strong recommendation. That's Spiritfarer. The next game I'm going to talk about today could not be more different from Spiritfarer in tone. It is WATTAM, WATTAM, released in 2019 by Phenomena, and that is the company led by Keita Takahashi, who designed the Katamari games, including Katamari Damacy, which is on Switch now. Those crazy games in which you are a little prince who has to roll around a big sticky ball, hoovering up little objects like staplers, pencils, drawing pins until you have this huge ball. It's a really insane game, really surreal, a very specific brand of Japanese cartoon craziness that we all kind of adore on some level. You know, the Japanese humor and Japanese cuteness is so specific and rare. And and that kind of craziness that comes with it. I think that Keita Takahashi's games really do personify that phenomena. So if you're interested in that crazy stuff, like the old Afro Ken dolls and like, you know, the Pokemon kind of cuteness and, you know, gothic Lolita Harajuku cuteness, and just total off the wall surreal humor, then Keita Takahashi might be the game designer for you. But WATTAM it's quite a short experience. It took me 3 hours to finish it, 3 or 4. I did a little bit of extra stuff, but I think there is like quite a lot more to do. There's probably another hour of gameplay there if you want to go all the way through it. At least there's quite a few trophies that I didn't get yet. It was published by Annapurna Interactive. It's on PS4 and Windows. I played it on a PS4, where it did have some quite strange performance glitches, actually. For a game that's so seemingly technologically undemanding. I mean, I will admit that there are sometimes probably hundreds of little characters all jumping around on different islands on this game, but it doesn't feel like the kind of game that should be making the PlayStation drop frames or freeze. But it did a few times during my playthrough, but not in any way that affected my gameplay or affected my impression of the game. But I will mention it. If you happen to be sitting on a Windows PC, maybe that would be the way to play it, just to avoid that. So this game is a strange little story. You play as a little square who is called the Mayor. He has a mustachioed face drawn on him and a little bowler hat. And you start on an empty square in space. Before you know it, something springs out of the ground, and you make your first new friend. And your new friend you'll start to play with. You'll start to play games. You'll discover that if you take off your hat, you can explode a bomb that just sends everyone around you streaming into the sky, roaring with laughter. They all think it's so fun to kaboom together. And each new character that pops out of the ground, or pops out of the sky, be it a chair or a table or a house or toothpaste or a telephone, they all have little faces on them, or fruit or sushi. There's just all kinds of weird little objects that appear in this universe as if a world is being repopulated with all of the kind of the most mundane and the most surreal little objects that then play together. And the way that this game carries on is that you'll get a task, for example, explode the sushi. That can be a task. So you just have to go and find a piece of sushi, say hi to it, and then politely explode it, kaboom it with your hat. And then after you've kaboomed the sushi, maybe the sushi says, I want to be friends with other sushi. So you have to just take it by the hand and go and find loads more sushi. And then you've just completed 2 little quests and you'll get a trophy for each one. And that's how the game plays out. I picked the most mellow piece of music from the whole game because I just think that the Spiritfarer tone that we have on this podcast is worth maintaining. All of the music is completely bizarre. It's like bizarro, electronic, kind of crazy jazz. So as you're kind of traversing the world of WATTAM, it will turn out that there are 4 separate islands, each of which represents a season. You can sort of swim between them on these floating platforms, and you make friends on each island. New objects arrive. You can look through all of your objects to locate them. Sometimes you have to find something like a fork, for example. If some puzzle needs a fork, you have to locate the fork, become the fork, and then trot the fork onto a little moving platform. You can control anyone. You can control any of these things. You'll control the Mayor for most of the time because you need his kaboom power. But it's worth talking about the control scheme at this point, I think. The left stick is to move, and the right stick, counterintuitively, is not to change the camera, as it is in every other game. The right stick will move you to another character. So you tap right on the stick, you'll move to the sushi to your right. If you tap left on the stick, you'll move to the sandwich on your right, and you can control them and use their individual abilities. The way that you turn the camera is using L2 and R2 on a joypad. Maybe it's better with a mouse. It's extremely unintuitive, the control scheme, really clunky. Often you'll be using the right stick to try and find a character and just constantly moving to the wrong one because there's a big crowd. Or I was always forgetting that I had to use L2 and R2 to change my view. and so I was accidentally skipping out of my character for the entire duration I played the game. Really, really clunky, awkward controls. But the game is so joyful that I spent pretty much the whole time with a huge smile on my face, feeling absolutely bemused by what I was experiencing. So if you like the idea of 3 hours of just Keita Takahashi madness, this is a great little game to spend an afternoon with, or to play 20-minute bursts, because it does feel like your eyes are eating a lot of E numbers when you play this game. It's really, really, really crazy, bright-coloured candy of a game. Really fun, really clunky, really strange. It's on the PS4, it's on Windows. A big recommendation from me. I picked it up in the Christmas sales, and I'm really glad that I did. I think I'll play anything that Keita Takahashi makes in the future. Wonderful. That's WATTAM. I think I couldn't finish this show without giving a big shout out to Nex Machina, a game that came out in 2017 for PlayStation 4 and Windows. It is by Housemarque with a Q, a Finnish studio, been around for a long time. They made Stardust back in the day, and they've been porting it ever since. Stardust Ultra. Super Stardust Ultra is a game that I played recently in VR and had a great time, and they also made Resogun, the PS4 launch game that I'm yet to play, but I think I will after this. This is an interesting game as well. It's a classic shoot-'em-up with a modern twist, but it's interesting in that Eugene Jarvis was a creative consultant on this game. Housemarque have made games that are very inspired by some of Eugene Jarvis's seminal games in the shoot-up genre, such as Defender, Robotron, and Smash TV. And I remember playing Smash TV as a kid on my Commodore Amiga, and I was absolutely in love with it. So I guess I've always had a slight soft spot for twin-stick shooters, and Nex Machina is possibly the best or the most well-developed twin-stick shooter that I've come across. It's really masterful. It's a no-nonsense arcade shooter with a kind of a glitzy, beautiful-looking, 3D rendered graphical style. Loads of digital glitter, like everything that you shoot seems to explode like a firework. There are constant new enemies coming at you from all directions. You kind of land in a city environment. It's a linear corridor, top down. You move through the corridor, avoiding obstacles, dashing through lasers, taking on enemies and waves of enemies that spawn at you from all sides. You can blow up scenery to find secrets. You can rescue humans who are under attack and are being harvested by these kind of harvesters. So there's lots to think about as you're moving through in a very quick way. There are also these visitors. There's like a kind of a strange 10-part worm-style creature that will move around the play area on a rail and then vanish, and you have to shoot it before it vanishes. So as well as trying to get to humans before they are harvested, shooting the visitors, avoiding the lasers, evading and destroying the waves, picking up power-ups, moving strategically to do twin-stick crowd control. And then there are 5 really massive bullet hell bosses in the game that range from the fairly mundane and pedestrian first one through to the intensely difficult final one. I played first on the rookie mode and got through the game just fine on my second attempt. It's a good sort of 40 minutes for a run, I think. And then it turns out that on experience mode you will get an extra world after the final boss. And experience mode took me another 2 or 3 runs. The final boss is really difficult. In experience mode you get 100 credits, which sounds like a lot, but they go quickly. In rookie mode you get endless credits, so it's just the learning mode really. There is also a veteran mode that I haven't taken on yet, because experience mode was a handful. There are times when it feels like there is so much hell in this bullet hell. There are so many bullets in this bullet hell that there's barely anywhere to stand on the screen, and you're having to monitor so much that's going on at the same time, like timings of lasers coming at you, when to dodge, when to dash, how to stay close enough to be still shooting the boss whilst staying alive. it was some mental gymnastics, and I came out of the end of this game just really kind of buzzing after I took down that final boss. It was really adrenalizing. It really got the blood moving. This was a good game. It made me miss arcade games and action shooters. As you may know, if you listen to the podcast regularly, my style of game tends to be on the Spiritfarer side, on the meditative side, on the artistic side, on the indie, story-led, narrative-led, walking sim, open worlds, that kind of thing. That's all my type of game. And so this is kind of a retro game for me. It's a little out of step with what I usually cover, but I thought Nex Machina was such a masterful take on the twin stick genre, and I had such a good time playing it that I really wanted to give it a shout out on the show. I think I will go and play Resogun now that I've experienced this one, and I'll probably go back to Super Stardust Ultra VR as well, a really cool VR shooter. Nex Machina does have a story, but I really respect the fact that when you press X to start, there is no cutscene, there is no intro. You're thrown in the deep end and you're shooting within 5 seconds. You just have to observe the story as you go. As I said earlier, you start in a city, you move into a factory, you go deeper and deeper into the factory until you're passing kind of pods with humans in them, and you get to the architect and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit like, the story I would say is a little bit like a Matrix prequel, in that it's kind of, you arrive at a moment when humanity is being harvested from civilization. That's how the story looks. It's all visual storytelling. There's no text in the game. There's no dialogue in the game. There's no cutscenes in the game. You get a very short, cartoony cutscene at the very end that gives you the result of your takedown of this robot overlords. I believe that there's probably extra content in veteran mode. There was inexperienced, so I'm quite tempted to get back into that game, but oh my god, I can only imagine that veteran mode is really, really tough. They speed up the enemies and they give them more bullets, more attacks. And inexperienced, it was like a baptism of fire. So yeah, that's Nex Machina. Really enjoyed it. It's a hard recommend from me. And if I do play Resogun, and if I do complete Super Stardust Ultra, I might give them a mention on the show as well. That's Nex Machina. So that's our episode. Hope you enjoyed it. It's the first episode I've made by myself for quite a while, I realised. The last 3, the Game of the Year episodes, were all with guests, with Danny and Louis and Kieran. And I really enjoyed doing the podcast with other people. Maybe I will try and do more of that. In fact, one of the games that I'm planning to play this January is Immortals Phoenix Rising by Ubisoft. Another game based on Greek mythology. It seems like that is the vogue of the moment for games, to be set in that world, that realm, with Hades and with Spiritfarer and with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and now with Immortals Phoenix Rising as well. So I will do another episode with my friend Sam, also known as Clover on Twitch and Twitter, Clover EXE, and he founded the Lost Gamers Society streamer gang. He's a really cool local friend of mine. He's an Englishman living in Iceland, so we have that in common. I'm looking forward to talking about that with Sam. I did also play Disco Elysium in December. I had planned it for the last review of the year before I had that back issue and had to take a week off. So I will come back to Disco Elysium. It's a game that's very much worth talking about, especially seeing as it's coming to the consoles this year. I think it's nice that if I do an episode about it now, I'll keep it spoiler free so that when that game drops, you have more of an idea of what it's like. It's only been on PC so far, so I think a lot of console players haven't touched it yet, but it's really something. I will also do an episode about If Found, and I will talk about A Plague Tale: Innocence, which I'm right at the end of now. Very surprised by A Plague Tale for a company that hasn't really made games of that type until now. It really feels like a home run in a lot of ways. It's a little bit like a medieval The Last of Us in its kind of gameplay and its mechanics, with all of the good and bad that comes with that. So I'll be finishing that one off, hopefully in the near future. and I'll come back with a new episode about A Plague Tale. And maybe if found, I'll squeeze those two together. Then there'll be a Disco Elysium episode and Immortal Phoenix Rising. So thank you for listening. If you would like to find me on social media, you can find me on Twitter, where I talk all day long at Gaming in the Wild. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, all as Gaming in the Wild. And if you've enjoyed this show and feel like the new year is a good time to drop me $1 a month or $3 or $5 on Patreon, then that is very much appreciated too. You can find that at patreon.com/gaminginthewild. So that's all. Take care of yourselves and each other. I'll be back with a new episode next week. Bye-bye for now.